everybody, welcome back. Now, it's time for the big one. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. A lot of people got a lot of opinions about this game. Some people are really excited, some people are furious and rage-induced. And then you've got others who are like, it's okay. As for our opinion, well, I think before we share it, let's dive in and give a little bit of history.
With the success of Marvel Studios, Disney swept in and bought it for a very large sum. I don't know, that seems to be what they're doing nowadays. Buying Marvel, buying Star Wars, whatever. A move that, well, you can't argue with success, it really paid off as far as movies and merchandise goes. But as for video games, well, they decided to take full control of all of their licenses and choose not to renew existing contracts. So Capcom was now pretty much out on their butt. Disney decided to focus instead on in-house titles like Disney Infinity and the cell phone game Marvel Contest of Champions, which actually stole moves from Street Fighter. Not joking, just look. But as the years went on, Disney decided to change their minds. Disney Infinity was cancelled, and they began letting third parties begin to take development once again. They reached out to Capcom, which was a huge surprise, and in December of last year, we got the big announcement. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. You know, guys, I still remember the crowd reaction to the first trailer. When everybody, including me, saw MegaMan X, we were all like... But then when we all saw Iron Man, we were like... Now don't get me wrong, there definitely was indeed hype for a new addition to Marvel vs. Capcom. And let's be honest, as far as we knew, there definitely wasn't going to be one. Hell, Capcom needed Marvel a lot more than Marvel needed Capcom. But outside of Marvel vs. Capcom, there are indeed many Capcom fans that are starving for other particular franchises. I have to be honest, in 2017, it's kind of a small miracle that Capcom is still even around. The company seemed on the verge of going under, thanks to many poor business decisions that just ended up backfiring, inflated egos, and piss-poor PR management. Slowly, but surely, they have been trying to crawl back to what they once were. But it's not easy. Once trust has been lost, and oh boy has it, it's gonna be a long time before it's fully back to what it was, assuming if it ever gets there again. And it's not like they're still incapable of making blunders, like the initial launch of Street Fighter V. Meanwhile, as more and more gameplay was revealed from Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, the less excited fans were starting to become. The visuals failed to impress, the new fighting system was a big departure from the last game, and of course, there was all the DLC announcements as well. At this point, we were all pretty much numb to it. Then along came another game announcement, which pretty much crapped all over this game.
Dude! Oh my god! It looks so f***ing good! Yes! Yes! We're done! We're f***ing done!
3v3.
3v3. There he is! Yo! Oh my god! It's Marvel! Marvel, dude!
Dragon Ball FighterZ from Arc System Works, the creators of the Guilty Gear and BlazBlue series. That game is going to be a 2D 3-on-3 fighter in the same vein as the classic Marvel vs. Capcom series. And they are basically now doing better than Capcom can. With all of the negative press building, Infinite was very much behind the 8 ball when the game finally came out. Now the biggest departure from previous Marvel vs. Capcom titles is that for the first time in this series, we have a full-fledged story mode, complete with cutscenes and voice acting. You know, that stuff that we thought Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was gonna get, but sadly we're disappointed. Better late than never. As you go through the story, you face off in battles that you have to win in order to advance. They are either 2-on-2, 2-on-1, or 1-on-1. Most of the time you will be facing off against another playable character, but sometimes you will go against just regular henchmen, like the Ultron droids or symbiote BOWs. They also have their own hyper combos too, which is pretty funny.
Nowadays, as most of you probably know, it's pretty common for heavy-hitting fighters to have stories. Such fighting games as Tekken, Injustice, Mortal Kombat, and what those games have shown is that the stories can be equally compelling as they are entertaining. But with Marvel vs. Capcom, I've got to say that'd be a pretty big challenge, and very tricky. I mean, it's gotta be a pretty difficult task to write a story for a game like this without it coming off as some sort of weird fan fiction. And that just might be the case here.
Jeddah from the Darkstalkers universe travels to the Marvel universe and meets up with its Grim Reaper, Lady Death. He offers an alliance with her to restore equilibrium between life and death for both of their worlds. Intrigued by his offer, she calls upon her lover, Thanos, to make it so. With the power of the Space Stone, he discovers Able City and instructs Ultron to enter it and retrieve the Reality Stone. But Ultron, in the midst of doing so, meets up with Sigma and finds out that they actually have a lot in common. Oh, you can just smell the sexual tension building up. Both Ultron and Sigma decide to join forces, quite literally even, and become a new entity altogether. Ultron Sigma. Ha! Sorry, I just suddenly had flashbacks to Dark Khan. Ultron Sigma defeat Thanos and start a plan to wipe out all organic life. This causes the heroes and heroines of both worlds to unite and stop them. The story is pretty ridiculous, and it is filled with several glaring plot holes. The story just doesn't have that cinematic flair like Injustice 2. However, it does have its moments of fan service. And for an old Capcom fan like myself, I could not help but get all giddy inside. The old Dante is back from the original Devil May Cry series, and wow, is it really good to see him again. And what's even cooler is that he does play an integral part in the story. However, the stuff with MegaMan X was a real treat, especially his interactions with Rocket Raccoon. I am playing a new game with MegaMan X. Let that sink in for a moment. Seeing all of this with X wandering around really just makes my heart happy. Now, as cool as it all is, it's still not quite enough for me to just forgive Capcom for everything. At least not until we get a new Mega Man game. But I'll take what I can get. It's a start. The voice acting in this game is very hit and miss. Most of it is okay, but some deliveries are pretty bad. And for some reason, Morgan's voice actress just can't seem to decide whether or not she has a Scottish accent or not. Ruben Landgren returns as Dante, which is awesome, and is always a joy to listen to. Other returning cast members include TJ Rotalo as Frank West, which, hey, that is a real treat in of itself, because he never should have been recast in the first place with Dead Rising 4. What the hell were they thinking? Now, this might be a personal thing for me, but I still tend to get very annoyed when I hear Johnny Young Bosch as Zero. Now, come on fans, do not get me wrong, I have nothing personal against Johnny himself. He is a fine actor, and when he yells out an attack with so much intensity, it does sound cool. But to me, Zero will always be Lucas Gilbertson. He adored playing Zero and would have absolutely reprised his role if he was approached. The fact that he got recast just bothers me as another one of those stupid Capcom blunders that they weren't really thinking about. The weakest part of this game is without a doubt the visual design, though. I'm not sure why they didn't retain the comic book look from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I mean, that game had its issues, but it did look great. But for some reason, it seemed like they wanted this game to have its own look. And it just did not work. The graphics range from bland to just plain bad. I mean, it looks like just most of the characters have a hard time showing any expressions on their faces. The character models don't have that photorealism from Injustice 2, or stylized animation from Guilty Gear. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. Now, they don't all look bad. I mean, to be fair, X and Zero look pretty good, Thanos is alright, and so is Jeddah and Captain Marvel. But so many of the others look like dead-eyed puppets, or just got hit repeatedly with an ugly stick. Captain America looks like he's wearing shoulder pads and has no neck, and Spider-Man may have been taking the same steroids that Chris Redfield has been doing. The backgrounds are familiar territories, but they lack the visual pop.
Now let's talk about the roster for a moment, and just looking at it, it's already pretty funny, because you can see that Capcom clearly had some restrictions put on them when it came to selecting characters that were to represent the Marvel Universe. It seemed like Capcom was really only able to choose characters that Disney and Marvel owned the licenses to when it came to the cinematic universe, while 20th Century Fox still has licenses for characters like X-Men, the Fantastic Four characters, and, of course, Deadpool. So sadly, because of the whole debate going on between Disney, Marvel, and 20th Century Fox, those characters are pretty much left out.
Remember how I went on about Mega Man not being in Marvel vs. Capcom 3? Well, it's even worse here. Because this series literally started out with the X-Men, with Children of the Atom, and X-Men vs. Street Fighter. With no Wolverine, no Storm, no Deadpool, and no Doctor Doom, for that matter. It's a glaring omission, and it can be pretty distracting. On the Marvel side, we do have Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Hawkeye, Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, Ghost Rider, Dormammu, Thanos, Spider-Man, Nova, Ultron, and from the Guardians of the Galaxy, Rocket Raccoon, and Gamora. On the Capcom side, we have Ryu and Chun-Li from Street Fighter, Morrigan and Jeddah from Darkstalkers, MegaMan X and Zero from MegaMan X, Chris Redfield and Nemesis from the Resident Evil series, Arthur and Firebrand from Ghosts and Goblins, Dante from Devil May Cry, Frank West from Dead Rising, Mike Hagar from Final Fight, Brad Spencer from Bionic Commando, and Strider Hiryu from Strider. Other characters, as mentioned before, will become playable through DLC. These characters include Black Panther, Sigma, Winter Soldier, Black Widow, Venom, and a female monster hunter. So if any of these fighters sound interesting to you, you're going to have to open up your wallet. Again.
Now, I know that the review has technically been sounding pretty negative up to this point, but the biggest question of all right now is, can the gameplay redeem it? And I think it does.
Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite uses a 2-on-2 fighting style, which is almost a cross between Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Marvel Superheroes. In place of the third partner that has been used in the last two titles, you have the choice of selecting from one of the Infinity Stones. In your selection, you have 6 to choose from. The Reality Stone can launch energy balls, the Soul Stone can take away a bit of your enemy's vitality, the Mind Stone can render your foe immobile, the Time Stone can warp you for short distances, the Space Stone sucks your opponent towards you, and the Power Stone can hit your enemy with a strong attack that will knock them backwards. When hits are connected, the infinity gauge at the bottom of the screen will start to fill up. When it reaches at least 50%, you can perform an Infinity Storm, which is a special ability that you can use for a short period during the battle. The great thing about doing this is that you can use these storms to help out your character's abilities. For example, try equipping the Space Stone to Chris Redfield. When he activates it, his foe will be encased in a small box, making him target practice. These stones can also help with characters' weaknesses, like with Strider. Despite his awesome offense, Strider Hiryu is pretty much a glass cannon. But with the Soul Stone equipped, you can bring him back to life if he falls by using its Infinity Storm. So the stones do manage to add a little bit extra to the fight. You can choose to mix and match to find the right ones to get the most effectiveness to your team. In fact, with this, we really did not miss the third partner. It really does feel like a good way to expand upon the strategy, and I gotta say that I actually do prefer this over the X Factor from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. As far as combat goes, you have 4 main attack buttons, 2 light and 2 heavy hits. In addition, you have an Infinity Surge, which can activate the stone, and a switch out with your partner. The Surge and Switch buttons initiate the Infinity Storm. The switch system is very similar to the function from Street Fighter Cross Tekken. In the midst of attacking your opponent, you can launch him into the air, continue the hit string, and when you send him down, you can call in your partner to catch your enemy on the ground to continue the combo string going. And it is pretty effective. In fact, I'm pretty sure Gene learned it from me. Like in previous games, you have the Hyper Bars, which here can reach up to level 4. When available, like before, you can perform multiple hyper combos. Included here are also dashes and super jumps, so the gameplay retains that fast, smooth action that the series is well known for. One nice technique is advancing guards that can push your character back. Also, if you time the maneuver just right, you can send projectiles back at your opponent. Now, of course, it does require that precise timing, but it can be useful if you do manage to get the hang of it. By tapping the light attack button repeatedly, you can perform a pretty easy combo, which is nice to start with. But as you get more comfortable with the game and its controls and fighting, you will definitely learn how to mix up your attacks with some stronger combos, and doing cross-ups. You know, all that good stuff. In short, the fighting system is a lot of fun to use. From our perspective, it does for the most part feel like the roster is pretty fairly balanced. Each character brings something unique to the table, from large brutes to quick and agile high flyers. It may not have all the characters we want, but at least they are all pretty fun to use. Many of the returning characters have some adjustments made, such as new moves. At the start of the game, the modes include Story, Battle, Training, and Mission. In battle, you can play arcade mode where you battle a series of AI opponents. You can also choose to fight offline against a CPU, or of course, naturally, another player in the same room. Well, that is, assuming you spent $45 to get another controller. Remember back when consoles used to come with 2 controllers right out of the box? Ugh, I miss those days. In mission mode, you can go through the tutorial and execute character-specific combos to help you master them, while training mode lets you try to perfect them. The more you do in this game, the more you can unlock, from new costumes, movies, character bios, artwork, blah blah blah. Now all that's left is online, which, let's face it, is always the main part of these fighting games. The online features several different modes. In ranked match, you can battle competitively against other players, with a chance to move up the ranking board. In casual match, you can face off with others without having to worry about your rank.
Now the game introduces a beginner's league, where players who have a rank of 14 and lower can compete against each other. If this were a sports game such as baseball, this would technically be considered the minor league, where new players and players who have a considerable lack of skills can face off against each other.
It's a place where you don't have to worry about strategy and all that, but you can also learn and get experience before stepping up into the major. When entering a contest, you have the choice of selecting to face fighters in your one region, or expand to all of them. And you can select the online connection strength for your opponents, from 1 to 5. When I first jumped in, I did have some problems at first finding some opponents, so I did make some adjustments to broaden my net. I did finally get some, and had a good time. However, I did occasionally run into some pretty terrible lag. This was due to finding someone who has a weaker internet connection. So, honestly, you guys really should be wary of that. When you face off against an opponent, you have the choice to rematch until a player wins 2 bouts. You can also return to previous searches, and I'm sure it's just a matter of time until players finally learn how to exploit infinite combos and things of the nature. But so far, I've not heard anything. In ranked matches, you will most likely get opponents with better internet connections, and when they do, the action feels just fine. One thing I will say about the music in this game is that it is actually really good. It fills up enough adrenaline to intensify the fights as they're going on, but one track in particular that I had to mention was the final battle theme with Ultron Sigma. If you recognize it, is taken straight from MegaMan X2's final boss theme with Sigma. It is truly awesome to hear this. Now overall, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is not a bad game at all. It does have its flaws, the story is silly, and the graphics are, well, below average. But if you don't care about that stuff and only care about the fighting, then you will find that the mechanics are very good. The roster does lack some key characters, sure, but the ones that are here are still pretty fun to use. The fighting is different from previous titles, which is to be expected, but it still retains that smooth and fast-paced action that you are accustomed to with this franchise, or should be. For me personally, I have been a Capcom fan for many, many years, and it was the Capcom characters that made this game for me. It was a chance to catch up with some of my old favorites. And I am at the very least happy that Capcom was able to deliver that and make me feel like this was fan service to old fogies like myself. But I do feel that you can indeed wait for a price drop though, to around maybe $30 or $40. Or you can wait for the Ultimate or Super Edition, which we all know was probably inevitable. It could happen.
As long as there's hope, we can change the future.
Well, there you guys have it. There's our review of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, as well as the conclusion of our review series of the entire Marvel vs. Capcom franchise. Well, Rob, do you fully comprehend it all now?
Wow, thank you, William. I understand the series perfectly now. All of them suck, because none of them are on a Nintendo console.
You know what? I'm done with you, alright? Meanwhile, guys, let us know in the comments below. What did you guys think of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite and other Marvel vs. Capcom games? Which one's your favorite? Did you love this game? Did you love playing as MegaMan X? I sure did. I would love to hear your comments, and let us know what other reviews you'd like to hear from us in the future. Meanwhile, I've been your host, William Morris. This has been exhausting, and we will see you next time in whatever franchise we decide to cover next.
How about something from Nintendo? Nintendo and none of this PlayStation Xbox crap.
You know what? You are completely just omitted from making any decisions around here, so